Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ollie. I'm a final year medical student at the University of Warwick, and today we're going to be talking about difficult interviewers in your med school interviews, and more importantly, how to deal with them. Because a facet of interviews that can cause even the most talented and confident applicants to come unstuck right at the last moment is the difficult interviewer. No matter what you say, no matter how well informed you are, they will always find some way to turn what you've said against you and paint you to have some completely objectionable view. You come out of that station feeling dejected and hopeless and feeling like you failed the interview for sure, and your chances at a place at medical school are completely gone. And this happens a lot. Right, so how do we deal with it? The first thing to say and to understand is that if an interviewer has been mean to you, they will most certainly have been mean to everyone else who's come through that station. And the second thing is that this is somewhat mitigated by the MMI format, the multiple mini interview, where you're doing your interview over 6 to 10 discrete stations. Because the marking of all these stations is separated, this means that even if you do completely bomb one station, which most of us do in our med school interviews, one bad performance does not drastically alter your chances at a med school place. That's just not how it works. And that will remain true no matter how confrontational that one interviewer was. But the really, really crucial thing to be aware of, and please understand that this is true, is that many interview stations actually have a difficult interviewer baked into them by design. This is actually something that myself and my colleagues have deliberately done when we've designed mock interview stations for people. And the reason for this is that in their guidance on outcomes for undergraduate medical students, the GMC specifies that people have to be able to deal with unforeseen and difficult circumstances and difficult encounters. And although it can be an extremely unpleasant experience, actually a difficult and confrontational interviewer who is instructed to be ruthless and will grill people regardless of what they say, that's a really good way to see how candidates are going to cope under pressure. And the thing is that ultimately as a medical student, there are going to be situations where you are not protected from very confrontational situations, and this can happen much earlier in the course than you realise. It's just the reality of the NHS and how patients can be when they're not in a particularly good mood or not able to see your point of view for various reasons. Things can get tough. But the point of this video, of course, is what we're actually going to do. How are we going to tackle a difficult interviewer? So regardless of whether your interviewer is being antagonistic by design or just because they're feeling like an asshole that day, simply approach them as you would any confrontational person in any situation. Almost like an MMI substation. Maintaining your composure is going to be absolutely crucial, as is keeping hold of your reasoning and logical processes. If they find a flaw in your logic, as often they will, because they're a seasoned interviewer, often a medical expert, and you're not, you can simply acknowledge it and defuse it. Just say, that's a really good question, or that's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that. Please can I just have a few seconds to think about it? Then you can take some time to evaluate your thoughts and continue. It maintains your control of the situation. You're saying, as an instruction, give me some time, and it also buys you a bit of time to think of what you're going to say next. And what this demonstrates is that if they're being difficult by design, it's actually showing that you can keep cool under pressure, you can keep your grasp on the situation, and you can continue your decision-making process even under scrutiny and under pressure. And we can also consider a different perspective, which is that if someone appears to be behaving in an unreasonably hostile way, there are many reasons why someone might do that, and we might not be privy to what they are. It may well be that our interviewer is under an immense amount of personal stress. Obviously that shouldn't feed into the medical interview process, but in reality it might. They might be role-playing a character who is under an immense amount of stress, and you might want to ask about that. Because ultimately, even the nicest people in the world can have bad days and lash out at other people. Again, that's something that if you can demonstrate you're able to deal with it in a calm and compassionate way, that's going to actually look really good, even though it is challenging. And of course, personal gripes and personal situations, as we've said, aren't an excuse for crappy behaviour on the part of an interviewer, because your interview process is supposed to be completely separate and unaffected by external problems. However, they are a good mimic for real-world aggressive situations with patients, and if you can keep an aggressor on the back foot, maintain your control, that will stand you in very good stead for clinical work. And then some final notes on your interview itself and how this experience can feed into the wider process. Medical schools are very, very aware of the fact that different interviewers behave in different ways and that some people can be deliberately obstinate and difficult. This happens so frequently just because it's a facet of human behaviour that you get two groups of people. We have what are called hawk examiners, hawkish behaviour, where they're looking to ruthlessly mark candidates down, and we have a separate group called dove examiners, who tend to be very nice, very friendly to everyone. And so you end up with two extremes where this small group of hawkish examiners will give their candidates much lower scores than people who are marked by other examiners, and dovish examiners will score their group of candidates more highly than other people on average, and medical schools will actually statistically correct for both of these groups when final scores are allocated. And this is how the medical school interview process is standardized. They're very aware that this happens and there are statistical ways of dealing with it. Exactly the same thing happens in medical school exam scores during your clinical OSCEs particularly. But lastly, the thing that I would urge you to remember is that if an interviewer says something that really crosses a line with you, or behaves in a way that makes you really uncomfortable, or they're very aggressive with you in an inappropriate way, you can and should report that back to the medical school as soon as you're out of the interview, preferably in as much detail as you can. And I know from experience that it's extremely easy to fall into the trap of not reporting things like this because you don't want to be seen to make a fuss. You're worried that it will negatively affect your application in some way, that they'll remember your name, that you're causing problems. No, that's not how it works. In this situation, the medical school really needs to know if someone is behaving inappropriately. And if anything, they will really appreciate your honesty. Because if it's happened to you, it's probably happened to other people. Always remember that as a medical student, when you're attending your clinical placements, when you're at the university, you are not a student, you are a member of staff. You're there as a colleague, and if someone is behaving inappropriately towards you in what is effectively your workplace, that is a clear infraction of their workplace policy, their workplace agreements, and it needs to be dealt with properly as soon as possible. So don't ever be scared about raising professionalism concerns even as early as the interview. So that's it guys, it's a question I get asked a lot about how to deal with difficult interviewers. I hope some of that has been helpful. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel to make sure you don't miss any future videos in this interview series. I've got a couple of months worth lined up, and please go and check out my website ollieburton.com for my full suite of interview videos, more tips, hints and articles to help you land your place at medical school. Take care and I'll see you next time. That's where we're going to wrap this video guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to hit that like button for me, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to go and check out ollieburton.com for all of my free interview resources and videos. If you've got more questions, be sure to let me know down in the comments below.